My name is Jerry Gill. Today is January 12, 2010. I'm visiting the Cortney Timmons Cowley at the Oklahoma State University campus in Stillwater, Oklahoma. This interview is for the O State Stories project of the Oklahoma Oral History Research Program. Cortney, thank you for taking time off from your winter break to be with us today here in Stillwater.
Thank you for having me.
Cortney, there's a lot of questions I want to ask you about OSU, and particularly about your scholarship career kind of at Oklahoma State. But first of all, can you tell me a little bit about your early life, where you grew up, a little bit about what you did in school, your parents and family?
Sure. I grew up in Ada, Oklahoma, and I was born May 9th, 1986, and I have an older sister who graduated from OSU with a degree in advertising, and a younger brother who is currently at OSU OKC getting his paramedics license and getting his degree in firefighting. So we're all very proud Oklahoma State fans. My mom is a junior high and high school librarian, and my dad is a vice president and human resource officer at Vision Bank in Ada. And throughout high school, my grandpa was always he was kind of a cowboy, like one of the true cowboys. He was a ranch manager and, rode horses, and he plays the fiddle. And so I always really looked up to him and would just go out feeding his cattle with him and just really getting an appreciation for agriculture, but not only that, but the resources that sustain agriculture, like water and land. And so then once I got into junior high and high school, I started doing science research projects dealing with environmental sciences. And so and I was also an active member and actually a state officer in FFA. So kind of those two things combined led me to an overall appreciation of the environment and agriculture, which is what brought me to OSU to eventually study biosystems and agricultural engineering with an emphasis in environment and natural resources. So
You went to what high school?
I attended Bing High School. Yes, where I also
played. Activities there?
Okay, I played basketball. I was on the varsity basketball team. And I also, like I said, was involved in FFA, where I competed in livestock shows. I showed steers and heifers, and I even showed rabbits there for a little while. And I actually did the best with the rabbits that I had. And I also, like I said, competed in science fairs and Oklahoma Junior Academy of Science, where I was able to compete at the National Junior Academy of Science in Washington, D.C. one year and the International Science and Engineering Fair. And those things, I think the combination of playing basketball and competing in science fairs gave me a real kind of thirst for competition. I really like to compete, which is why when I came to OSU, I wasn't good enough to play basketball. So I found myself, desiring other avenues such as academics, scholarships, and even competing in science research competitions.
Cortney, a little bit before we get into kind of your experiences, I want to ask you, were there some values or lessons you learned growing up? You shared some of these, maybe some other values and lessons that you learned growing up that helped shape your values and shaped your life later? Sure.
Definitely, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents, and one thing I always noticed about them was they didn't have more than an 8th grade education, but they always valued education. All of my parents and my aunts and uncles all have college degrees, and my grandparents made sure of that, and they always supported us and everything we did. And another thing I learned from them was hard work, and but from the time that I could lift a hay bale, I was hauling hay, and we had a wood heater at our house, so every winter before it got cold, we would go and chop wood and haul wood, and I would always complain about it. And my dad would tell me this story about an ant and a grasshopper, and how the grasshopper didn't prepare, and the ant did, and so just really kind of what hard work and preparation can do for you, and just being a woman and like a girl growing up, you always, worry about maybe what you're wearing or like material things. And my mom would just always tell me, you don't have to worry about what other people think of you, and just be yourself. And, things like that don't matter. It's what's inside, and it's, what you do for others that really matters. And so I've always been kind of a sympathetic person, and so just the values of helping people and people that maybe don't have as much as you do, or even helping others. And like, I was always good in math, so if I could help one of my friends in math, then they could help me in another subject. So I think those were, to me, I was never maybe the smartest, but my parents and grandparents always told me that, you don't have to be the smartest as long as you're willing to work hard and, do your best. And that's what's really important. So.
Now, your older sister attended OSU before?
Yes.
Okay. How far ahead of was she of you in school?
She's only a year ahead of me in school, so we're 11 months apart, and so we were always really close. So that was a lot of fun when she came up here, and we were able to.
And I guess in addition to, of course, your FFA work, you're probably on campus for events. So
yes.
Did your sister come to Oklahoma State? Did that influence you to come to OSU as well?
Yes, and I was actually, it's funny because, my sister, the FFA was definitely a big reason for me to come up here. My sister spent her first 2 years at East Central University in Ada, and then, so I guess I was kind of the one that influenced her to come up here.
Okay.
And she came up here and just absolutely loved it, said that she wished she had been up here for all 4 years, but so.
Now, what office did you hold, state office in FFA?
I was the Southeast District Vice President.
Okay, great, fantastic. Well, do you remember when you came on campus as a student, some of your first impressions of OSU, the campus in Stillwater?
Yes, it was, I don't think I could have gone anywhere else but OSU and survived, because I was so homesick my whole first year. And the people that ended up, I was really sheltered my whole life, and my parents always took care of everything, and so I was up here all by myself and missed being home. And even though I was only 2 hours away, it seems kind of silly now, but there were so many people at OSU that just really cared about me. And even as a freshman, I hadn't done anything to deserve anyone's notice or their special attention, but I just if I ever needed anything, I knew that there were certain people, even professors, I could go to, and they just really took care and would tell me, I need to do this certain thing, like pay a bill or enroll in a class. How do I do that? And so just everyone here is so friendly and so nice, and they just really care. Professors really care. They want to mentor you. They want you to learn things to the best of your ability, and they want you to take those things and go out and make a difference in the world. And so by the time I graduated, there's so many relationships that I developed, and which is why I love coming back here and seeing everyone. But I remember one instance exactly. Since I was a state officer, I couldn't attend classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those were our FFA days. And there was a class that I was supposed to take my second semester in biosystems engineering that was on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And so I just didn't take it. And the professor that taught that class, at the end of the semester, we were at a banquet, and he was kind of grilling me as to why I wasn't in his class. And so I started talking to him, and his name's actually Dr. Glenn Brown. And I was really intimidated by him at first, but then we just got to talking, and I told him about my background in competing in science fairs and being involved in FFA. And then after the banquet, he gets up and he's like, "Cortney, come with me. There's someone I want you to meet." And we walk across the room, and that's when I met Dr. Grauman for the first time. And so just kind of, and then Dr. Brown ended up being one of my greatest, mentors here at OSU. I worked on a research project under him, and he wrote letters of recommendation for me. And then after that was the dead week, and then the next week, finals week, I went and spoke to Dr. Grauman in his office. And this was my freshman year.
Your second semester.
Yes.
Year.
Yes. So.
What did you know what you wanted to major in when you first came to Oklahoma State?
Yes.
And so did you just select a major and stay with it? And what was that major?
My major was biosystems engineering,
That's a little bit. Now, is that in the College of Engineering, Architecture, and Technology, but it also some classes are in agriculture as well?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I was able to be a part of both colleges. And it's funny because I came to a science camp up here the summer after my sophomore year, and it was an environmental science camp, and I had an interest in, even before that, I came up here for a 4-H state roundup, and my freshman year in high school, and I went on the tour for engineering, and we just so happened to go to the biosystems engineering lab, and Dr. Marvin Stone took me on a tour of the lab, and I loved it. And then the next summer when I was up here for that camp, I met with the recruiter in biosystems engineering, and she gave me a lot of information on it. And from then on, that's just what I wanted to do. I got here and started in biosystems engineering and finished, and never wanted to do anything else. And it was really one of the greatest assets, I think, of what my major was the fact that I was in the College of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources and in the College of Engineering, Architecture, and Technology. I could be a part of any organization in both colleges. I had 2 wonderful deans that I could pick their brains about different things and benefit from. And I was actually on the SEAT student council, and I did more in the College of Engineering, but I still really valued being in the College of Ag as well.
Your background, you described earlier about resources on the farm and learning towards those things.
Yes.
And environment, did that impact your decision into going to biosystems engineering?
Yes, definitely. And I knew that I could do really anything, but like environmental science in the College of Ag or something like that. But I always really admired engineers for their abilities to analyze and solve problems and to be able to build things and design systems. And I felt like taking that avenue would be the way that I could really do more for the agricultural industry and the environment. So,
great.
yes.
Put a couple of us together, you indicated your strength in math and
yes.
analytical sciences, and then with your love of resources and environment.
Yes, it was kind of the
natural
perfect
fit for
marriage.
you.
Yes.
It's great. Yeah. What were some of you mentioned Dr. Brown and some early professors and people particularly early in your career that influenced you and supported you that you recall?
Yes, definitely. Dr. Brown was a huge supporter and mentor of mine. And then I also worked with Dr. John Soley and one of his PhD students, Stuart Reed, on another project the year after I had done the first one with Dr. Brown.
Mm-hmm.
And with both of those were Lou Wentz research projects. I won the Wentz Research Scholarship, which is given through the Department of Scholar Development. And that was just a great experience. To be able to do good research at a university level was really important to me. And to be able to have the opportunity under those 2 professors who I respected so much and who are respected in our field nationally, it was quite an honor. And of course, Dr. Grauman. I can't imagine my college experience without Dr. Grauman and Gail Gillen, his secretary in that office, and just between doing Wentz research projects and studying abroad through that office and taking Dr. Grauman's class, which was Windows to the World, it just really opened my eyes to all the possibilities that OSU has to offer a student and away from the classroom. And so Dr. Grauman and Dean Reed in the College of Engineering, who I went on a study abroad trip to Japan with. I was in Seat Scholars, and then Dr. Ed Miller, who I knew in high school because of his involvement with FFA, and he's just a very visible figure to a lot of really good high school students across the state, including me, and I just always looked up to him because he was so nice, and he remembered so many students' names, and I would just go talk to him. I remember one day I didn't know who else to go to, and I was trying to decide I was trying to make this big decision in my life, and I just went into Dr. Miller's office, and he got this piece of paper and wrote down both the situations, the pros and cons, and we made that decision right there. So, there were any number of people at OSU that I could have done that. And then even people like Jana Moore, who's the secretary in biosystems and ag engineering and just support staff. And she was like my mom here. And so there's all kinds of people like that just really care about students. And so.
Can you talk to me about some of your non-academic activities in your OSU experience? Because we want to get into some of your scholar activities, but
Okay.
just organizations, activities, experiences in the campus.
Yes. When, like I said, that may not sound like it goes, but it does. Whenever I came to OSU after being involved in FFA my freshman year, I was fully prepared to be involved in everything the College of Ag has to offer. But I met a guy and who I'm now married to, who's an OSU grad, and he had a friend who was from his fraternity that was the president of the College of Engineering, Architecture, and Technology Student Council. So the very first day I was here, I went to this club and society fair, and he just, took me by the hand basically and introduced me to the Seat Freshman Council leaders. And really the rest is history, because I ended up being involved in not just Seat Freshman Council, but I was a Seat Ambassador, and I was in Seat Scholars, and I was in Seat Student Council and actually served as the president of Seat Student Council. So I just completely went with the College of Engineering route, which I don't regret at all, because the year that I was fortunate enough to be president, our council won Best Council in the Nation, Best Engineering Council in the Nation. They also won again the next year. Not because of anything that I'd done, but just because Seat Student Council, it just gets better and better every year. And we were really benefiting off of people who had, brought me up through those ranks. And then I was also involved in Student Government Association. When I was a junior, one of my really good friends decided to run for SGA, a vice president, and it was funny because on one of Dr. Grauman's trips that we'd gone on, me and her and then the guy that ended up running for president were just on a train, and that's when they started talking about running for SGA president, vice president, and we were discussing strategies and things that they wanted to do. And so I ended up helping with their campaign, and I told them, if you guys get elected, you should form a recycling or some sort of sustainability committee through SGA. And they ended up getting elected and formed a recycling committee and asked me if I would be the chair of it. And I was like, of course, I wanted you to do this. So I was the chair of the recycling committee, which is now called the Sustainability Committee under SGA. And that was kind of the avenue that I was able to. I thought that if OSU was going to have something like that, it needed to be under SGA so that it could have the funding and the voice to really get things accomplished. And that was also the summer after I had won the Udall scholarship and met a student from the University of Missouri. And he told me about this tailgate recycling program that they had started at the University of Missouri. And that was my first initiative here as the chair of the recycling committee. I wanted to do tailgate recycling at OSU football games. And I had actually heard about that before I met this student, because Dr. Grauman had graded his Udall scholarship application. And when he got back, told me, this student did this, and you really need to meet him and get to know him and find out about this program. So, and then we also did all kinds of other things, but that was the main one.
Can you tell me a little bit about the recycling program, kind of what it consisted of, and what were the components of that?
Yes. We, at the beginning of every home football game, we have volunteers that come, and we meet about 4 or 5 hours before kickoff and pass out green bags. So we knew that the bags that we passed out needed to have some sort of distinguishing feature. So what better than green to promote sustainable thinking?
Green.
And actually, the first year that I started it was me and 2 volunteers. 2 girls showed up for the first day. And we just went around with these green bags, and we also made these little flyers that were quarter sheet flyers that on both sides one side talked about our program and the other side talked about why you should recycle, the benefits of recycling. So the first year was just kind of to initiate it, and I really just wanted to educate people about the program and about recycling and why it was important. And it was really interesting. And from the first year to the second year, it was just amazing at how many people caught on. Really, in the first year, by the last game, people were looking for us, and tailgaters were like, well, we were waiting for you to bring us our bag, and if we didn't get there soon enough, they'd have little piles of aluminum cans and plastic bottles just sitting there ready for us. So it was really interesting, and the program's still going. And so after we passed up the bags, we would just leave them out there. People would put their recyclables in the bags. And, anytime you have alcohol involved, sometimes we get bags that are a little dirty. People will put trash in there, and we had to sort through it. But so after the game, we would go pick up the bags, take them to a centralized location, sort through them, get them all cleaned up, and aluminum cans in a bag, plastic bottles in bags, and glass bottles in bags. And we would take them to a recycling center. And now, the last 2 years, they've taken the aluminum cans to Habitat for Humanity for their Cans for Habitat program. So we don't benefit from this program at all. The sustainability committee doesn't. And that was one of the things that we really wanted to do, was to use the cans to benefit someone else. And we've formed a great partnership with Habitat for Humanity. And one reason we wanted to do that was because people know that they're not just recycling, which is great for the environment, but they're also helping someone else by doing it. It's been a really great partnership, and people really enjoy it. So
Let's see, from the first year to the first game, Cortney and two other
Yes.
how much did you grow? How many people you left were involved in the program?
It was the three of us for quite a while. And interesting enough, one of the girls that was there is now the chair of the sustainability committee, and she's also a Udall scholar. But that's just kind of a side note. But by homecoming, I show up at homecoming, and there were 10 people standing there. And so it was kind of the three of us all the way up to homecoming. And we'd have a few people show up, but then I get to homecoming, there's 10 people standing there waiting to help, and which is kind of rare for a game like homecoming, because usually we don't get as many volunteers because there's so many activities. And so then for the rest of the season, we didn't get any more than 20. And then the next year, one of my vice chairs became the chair, and she had the idea of including the freshmen, the PLC, President's Leadership Council, so they would come and help us. And from that, we would get a few students that would stay on when they didn't have to be there. So now I think they consistently have between 15 and 20 volunteers, sometimes more, especially if they have PLC helping them. And so it's really grown, and I think that it will hopefully continue to. And
What are your favorite hangouts on campus and off campus? Places to be, hangouts, stores, campus. What did you enjoy most?
It really changed my on-campus hangouts from year to year. In the beginning, I really liked the library and the fourth floor where it's really quiet. And then sometimes I really liked the reading room. But my mom's a librarian, so I just was always drawn to the library, and I think it's the most beautiful building on campus. So I like to sit in there and just know that I was in a really beautiful building, maybe. But and then Ag Hall was, because in biosystems engineering we have an undergraduate computer lab. So I spent a lot of time in there just because I had access to computers and printers, and all my friends from my major were always in there, and it's really close to some of the eating places on campus. So kind of in my later years on campus, especially my last year when I was working on the senior design project, I called that my second home. And off campus, I really did not have a typical college experience in terms of off campus, because the night that I graduated was the first night I ever went to the Strip or Eskimo Joe's. And I know that's really sad, but
surely not. Come on, you're kidding.
No, I'm not kidding. That was the first time. My fiance at the time took me, and we went to Eskimo Joe's and to the Strip, and so I just never felt like I had time to, and so many other things were more important to me. But my favorite places really were, there's a new Japanese restaurant downtown. It's called Tokyo Pot, and I really like that place. And it's probably my favorite. That and Bad Brad's are my favorite eating places in Stillwater. And I just would go to friends' houses and hang out. And so those are, anytime that I had to spend with and just hang out with people and my friends I took full advantage of it. So those are and I love to go to sporting events, especially when my brother was here. I mean, we did not miss a basketball game or a football game, or even like a soccer game. So I really liked going to the OSU sporting events. That was really my fun. That was where I really had a good time.
What are a couple things that most people would not know about Cortney Timmons Cowley? And one of them, I think you said that you never went to trip until she graduated.
Yeah, they wouldn't know that I'm not a party animal.
Right.
So.
Mr. Garrett, a couple things that people wouldn't know about you.
Oh, that's a good question. One of the things may be that, everyone has a food that they just won't eat or that they don't like or that they're picky about. Well, my whole life, I will eat anything, and I really like food. And I don't know if that's a really unique not knowing about me, but truly, I am not a picky eater, and I just, because people always, you go over to their house and they try to cater to what you like, and I'm just always like, really, you can feed me anything, and I will put it away.
Just feed me.
Yeah. So, and people that don't know me may not know that I have a miniature dachshund named Isabella, and she lives with my parents, but she is like, she's like when I go home, it's like me and her time, and she's really a horrible dog in terms of when other people are around. She hates other people, but she really likes me and my mom, and so I'm definitely an animal lover, and so I don't know. There's something more interesting about me that people wouldn't know. I'm also very accident prone. I am clumsy, and I have scars all over my legs to prove it. So.
That's great. Well, Cortney, maybe kind of changed a little bit in our kind of conversation to talking more about the scholar development and recognition program. Mm-hmm. And you participated in the program, including I think you competed for prestigious scholarships like and won with the Udall and the Truman Scholarship, which is quite a
yes.
quite an accomplishment and an honor, Cortney. When did you first, and how did you gave a little bit earlier, but could you kind of share with us how you first learned about the scholar development program? Was it started with an introduction with Bob Grauman that you were talking about earlier?
Yes, and I think before that even I knew about the scholar development program because my freshman year was when Ashley Hildebrand and Joel Holcomb won Gates Cambridge scholarships, and that was a really big deal for not only a school to have one of those, but 2 Gates Cambridge scholars. And so I remember just seeing that all over OSU headlines and in the news, and just wondering and reading about Ashley and Joel and just being so impressed by everything that they had accomplished, and especially hearing about Joel's story about how he kind of came, what he came from to what he accomplished. It was just really inspiring, and just wanting to know how to be involved in something like that, how to make my college experience that interesting and that inspiring, and knowing that they had done that through scholar development and with Dr. Grauman, and just kind of wanting to learn more about them and the things that they experienced, and how you could get a full paid scholarship to go to Cambridge, England. I thought that was really cool. So when Dr. Brown introduced me to Dr. Grauman, I had the opportunity to speak with him and to learn about some of the other former scholars that went through the program. It was really very intimidating because you don't really think, the whole way through, I never really thought that I could live up to what some of the former scholars had done. Like, I really looked up to Shannon Farrell and Chris Stevens, who were Truman scholars, and Chris was a Marshall scholar too, so I was like, there's no way. If they did it, there's no way I could do it. And so but then just meeting with some of the former scholars, and one person that I got to meet was Bart Fisher, who was a finalist for the Truman and the Marshall, but actually didn't win them. And he was kind of the one that really, Chris Stevens and Kyle Jones, who was a Pickering scholar, who really motivated me and said, yes, you can do this. There's no excuse. You at least have to try. And so I thought it was really cool to be able to just take who I was and what I had done and put it on paper and, I learned so much just about writing from Dr. Grauman. And so it was interesting to kind of see the history of the Scholar Development Program, what students had done, and then that I could be just finding out through Dr. Grauman and others, that I could be kind of put in that same group. It was
so after your intimidation factor, the competitive side of it.
Yes.
Right.
Exactly.
Good. Well, can you share a little bit about some of the activities and different components of the Scholar Program? For example, I guess you weren't in the freshman. You weren't a freshman scholar.
No.
But then you were Wentz.
Yes.
Start your sophomore year, and it's a Wentz research project that you did. Was it with Dr. Brown?
Yes.
But could you do like different components of that, coaching, application, process, just then we'll talk specifically about the two scholarships that you won.
Okay.
Generally, could you just share with us a little bit about the different activities and components and parts of the Scholar Program?
Sure. With the Wentz Research Scholarship specifically, well, there's also a Wentz Leadership Scholarship that I got my last year here. There's, with each process, they send out applications in the early part of the spring semester, and they're due by February, or they may send them out in the fall semester, but you fill out an application for the Leadership Scholar. It's very basic. You write an essay and fill out information about yourself. But for the Research Scholarship, each student is expected to come up with an idea for research and then find a mentor or professor who can help you and mentor you and find the resources you need to complete that project. And they actually encourage you to go outside of your field and maybe work with another professor or in another field and get a new experience. But so after you found your professor, you write a proposal. And I always found the process very scientific. I thought that I was really doing something, writing a proposal for like a research grant. So it kind of teaches you that process. And then you submit your application. And once you receive it, you get money to work on this research project for the whole next year with your mentor. And then you have to submit a middle of the year report on what your progress is, and then the next April you develop a poster of all your research and your findings, and you present it at Wentz Research Scholars Day. And so that's kind of a place where everyone comes together and you get to present your research, and kind of took me back to my old science fair days. So I really enjoyed it. And
this is administered through the Scholar Development Office.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, and then some of the other programs that they have are Dr. Grauman developed a program, I think alongside Blaine Gredeman, who was the first Rhodes Scholar at OSU, and to where they could take a group of OSU students over to the UK every year. And it started out at Oxford, and then they moved the program to Cambridge. And that was always a great experience. My first year, we spent 2 weeks in Cambridge, England, studying 17th century English news books. So for an engineering major, it was a lot of, because actually in high school, my best subject was always literature and grammar, English, things like that. That's what they always sent me to scholastic meets in, at least. So I really enjoyed kind of getting back into those sorts of things, being a little more well-rounded and learning literature, humanities, and getting back to writing.
Along with your math and that. Yes. You must be left and right.
I really enjoyed it. And the next year, we studied biology, James Joyce and the Irish Revolution or something. I just remember we studied James Joyce and things like Darwin and evolution, and I comparing that to James Joyce and some of his writings, and so if he was influenced by Darwin and his ways of thinking. So
yes, in some of his works.
Yes, so we spent 2 weeks in Cambridge, England, and then 1 week in Dublin, Ireland, since that's where James Joyce is from. And then every year they just come up with a new and exciting program like that through the Scholar Development Office. And
a couple of questions, Cortney. You're, again, kind of going back, your research, what was the title and the subject content of your research over those couple of years?
The first Wentz project that I did involved it was over the impacts of human land uses on soil microbial populations. And, well, it was the impacts of human land use and soil structure on soil microbial populations. So I took soil samples in 5 different types of land use areas, like residential, agricultural, forestry, native grass prairie, and can't remember, industrial, I think. And then I would analyze the soil, take soil samples from macropore structures in the soil matrix, and then analyze them and see like the chemical and physical composition of the soil. And then I would also analyze the microbial populations of them to see how basically humans impact the overall soil environment, how they impact soil microbial populations as an indicator of environmental degradation or things like that. And then the next year, I studied, my project covered how there was the wireless, I used a wireless sensor attached to basically a cow's tail to study if you could use a wireless sensor to identify bovine urination and defecation, basically, which every time I tell someone about this project, I feel like they probably think that I'm crazy, but non-point source pollution from cattle and an open range is a big deal. In Congress, they always talk about confined animal feeding operations and pigs and cattle and chickens and how they impact the environment, but those are all a point source, and I feel like the bigger issue to me is the non-point sources from cattle in the open range and how. So they had already developed these sensors in biosystems engineering and using them for other things. One of the PhD students was putting them on halters to identify grazing and patterns like that for his thesis and dissertation. And so I was like, well, how about I put the sensor on the other end and see. Yeah. So, and that combined with GPS and other technology, if you know exactly where the deposits are occurring and what's going on, that would give an agriculturist a way to put best management practices or other environmental structures up to help control non-point source pollution in surface water. So that was
interesting, Corey. I didn't.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Maybe
research.
that's the interesting thing about me is like.
Did you take the honors classes and work the honors program at all?
I was not in the honors college, which I kind of, looking back, I wish I would have at least tried it or enrolled in it at first and tried it, because I think that it is so beneficial to the students who are in it. But the one honors college class that I took was Windows to the World with Dr. Grauman through the Scholar Development Program. And that class was just an open, every day we would talk about a different national scholarship. It was 1 day a week. And then 2 students would come in with a current event and give a presentation, and then the entire class would debate about it. So it was kind of a class to teach us to, understand current events and actually seek current events out through reading reputable news sources and then developing opinions on them, and then being able to voice our opinions eloquently and debate with other people. So it was interesting, and it helped me so much, especially preparing for my Truman Scholarship interview and being able to think on my feet.
Can we maybe move into those scholarships a little bit? Could you talk about, you won the Truman Scholarship first. Could we kind of talk about the process and how some of these things you talked about, the winners in world class, and some of the coaching that faculty did, learning how to write, how to do your essays and et cetera, in your research program, how they come together. But could you kind of talk about, say, start with the Truman and what was the process, and can you walk us and talk us through that?
Yes, to begin with, the Scholar Development Office comes out with a Truman Scholarship application, which is a lot like the actual Truman Scholarship application from the Truman Foundation, but it's a little shorter. So you fill that out all on your own, pretty much, and I can't remember if we had to have letters of recommendation or not, but then you submit that to Dr. Grauman's office in Scholar Development, and they review it and pick finalists. So from the application process, they select finalists to be interviewed by a panel that includes Dr. Grauman and then a representative faculty member from every college. So I was lucky enough to make it to the interview for OSU, and then I think there were 6 of us that interviewed my year. So we go into a room, and there's a 30-minute interview where all of the faculty members ask you questions about your application, current events, and then just really anything else that they feel like. So, and then after that interview process, Dr. Grauman notifies those of us who are OSU nominees. You have to be, for any of these scholarships, you have to be nominated by your university. And so after that, there were 3 of us that were nominated from OSU, and we just immediately started the application process, which was, it should be fairly easy for most people. But for me, with a Truman Scholarship, it's a little different because with most scholarship applications, you have to write a personal statement, something about you. And actually, the Udall is a little different too. But for the Truman Scholarship, you have to write a policy statement where you are writing a letter to a congressional person or someone in the government, and you're writing about an issue. You tell about the problem, and then you tell them what you think should be done about it, and then any major obstacles that may come into context. So the whole Truman application is just about things that you care about. Like they ask, what do you think is the biggest issue facing the world today, basically, and tell us about your greatest leadership accomplishment, and tell us about your greatest service commitment, the greatest commitment that you have to community service. And so it's all leadership and community service, and the policy statement's really important. So then you submit and it's all online too with the Truman Scholarship, and then you submit that to the Truman Foundation. And through the whole process, I would write an essay, either the small ones or the big policy statement, and then submit it to Dr. Grauman, and he would mark it up. And, and anytime I would submit something to him, I would always go to his office to pick it up, because not only would he need to mark it up, but we would discuss it and talk about, he would want to know what I was thinking when I was writing it, basically. And so it was really good because he didn't just give me back a paper where he had, marked it all up, but we would talk about what needed to be done, how it could be better, and how I could get my ideas out there more clearly. And so to me, that was the most, even if I hadn't won any scholarships, that was so beneficial to me as a person, because I think written and oral communication are so important in whatever job or career you have and whatever you're doing. So that was really an interesting part of the process.
And then when you're through, then you submit it
Yes.
online.
Online, and then you receive. They send finalists an email, and they send non-finalists an email. And I remember when I got the email, I thought that because I was expecting to get a letter, and I didn't think that we would get an email. I didn't know how they would notify you, so I had to read it a bunch of times because I didn't really believe it at first. And then I had to run. I was in a lab and working on one of my WINS projects, and I had to run and get one of my friends that was in there and have them read it just to make sure I wasn't imagining things. And then, of course, I called Dr. Grauman. And then, so after that, there's so much more work to be done because they notify you, I believe, in the 1st of February, and then you just have so many weeks to prepare for your interview. And I had already been preparing just in case. I was reading the Wall Street Journal and The Economist and catching up on my current events and going through, making sure I knew everything about my policy statement there was possibly to know, and preparing for any question that they could ask me. And also Dr. Grauman sets up a panel of interviewers so that I could practice. And so that was, quite honestly, the practice interview that I had was much harder than the real interview that I had with the Truman Scholarship Committee. So I felt like they really prepared me for the interview really well. And so I went to Denver for my interview. Actually, my year we had 2 finalists from OSU. And so we both went together to Denver for the interview at the 10th District Court of Appeals. And when you're in there, they had us downstairs in this big room where all the candidates sat, and all we have, even after the first person goes, and even after they go, they can't leave until everyone's done. So all the finalists are just sitting in this holding room thinking about what's to come. And I was the second last person to interview in the whole day. And it was like, looking back, it's really kind of funny because the person that goes to before you comes down and tells you to go send you up. And you go to this little bitty elevator, go up to the next floor, and walk down this really long, dark hall and sit in this little chair outside of the interview room.
Like being principal's office.
Yep. And then the person before me came out. She was from OBU. And the Fred Slaybach, who's the executive secretary of the Truman Foundation, was like, you just wait here. We'll be with you in a minute. So they're just, really serious. And so you go in, and they're all sitting at this really big, long table, and you're just at the very end of it.
And how many were there?
There were 5 on our committee. And most committees, Truman Scholarship committees, at the regions where you interview, there are 6 or 7. So we had a little bit smaller one. And the committee members one of them was the judge of the 10th District Court of Appeals, and then there's college professors and the executive secretary and former Truman scholars, and you never know who you're going to have on your committee. So
then how did they notify that? Is you just compete against other people in your region, so that's
Yes.
the only level, you don't go to a national level?
Yes, my region was Oklahoma, Colorado, and Nebraska, and each region selects, if there's a candidate that is worthy of receiving the Truman Scholarship, they try to pick one from each state, and then they pick so many. I believe they pick 50 from each state, and then 15 at large positions. And
did you know on that day before you left? Did they notify you?
No. They come into, all the panel comes back into the room and with all the finalists, and they say, that they've selected. They tell you that they're very happy with the people that they selected, but they want all of us to know that we're winners, basically. And then later, it was spring break, and they notify your faculty representative, which is Dr. Grauman, or Dr. Grauman's counterparts all over the nation. And then at OSU, they like to surprise us. So most schools, I don't think, do that. Most schools just bring them into their faculty representative's office and they tell them. But here, they like to make it a big production. So I was here for spring break working on my WINS project, and Jana Moore, the secretary in biosystems, calls me one day, and she's like, we need a picture of you and your mentor for your WINS project for our BAE newsletter. And so she's like, you need to dress nice tomorrow and come ready to take this picture. So the next day I went, and my mom just so happened to be in Stillwater. And it was funny because she had, since I was here for spring break, a long time before that, she had said that she wanted to come spend some time up here because she wasn't going to get to see me. So she just so happened to be here, and that she knew by that point. But so she was going to be there. And so I go to Ag Hall. I was over in the BAE lab, and me and my mentor go over to Ag Hall, and she takes the picture. And it was funny because she was trying to get me over to the dean's conference room, and I was like, hey, why don't we go to the dean's conference room, because it's really pretty in there, and I thought that it'd be a great place for a picture. And she was like, yeah, let's do that. So we go over to the dean's conference room, and she opens the door, and I come around the door, and there's Burns Hargis standing right there.
And
then I walk in a little further. I see all these other people, the deans and my mom and support staff and my department head and professors.
But then you got a pretty good clip.
Yeah, but then my heart's beating pretty fast, and Burns Hargis says, on behalf of the entire OSU system, we'd like to congratulate you on being named OSU's 15th Truman Scholar. So that was really neat. And it's interesting how they do these surprises. So it's always a lot of fun.
How did you decide which scholarships to pursue? Because there's several prestigious scholarships, and you, I think, pursued those 2. Is that correct?
Yes.
How
Well,
did you decide that as opposed to Gates Cambridge or something else?
well, when I took the Windows to the World class
Mhm.
with Dr. Grumman, on the very first day, he talks about the different types of scholarships. There's the Truman and Udall, which are the leadership ones, and then the Gates Cambridge Marshall Rhodes, which are the more academic scholarships. And I kind of already knew that I'd lean more towards the leadership, but he described it as if there's something going on at campus, like a rally or a protest or an assembly going on, and you're the type of person that will grab your sign and go down there and just be right down there with them, talking, protesting the cause and just right in the middle of the action, then you'd be the type of person that would apply for a Truman or Udall scholarship. But if you're the type of person that would more be the type to sit back and think about the issue or read about it and analyze it, on your own to understand it, and then maybe a casual, quiet debate, then you'd be the type that would apply for like the Marshall or the Gates Cambridge or the other type of more scholarly ones. And I was like, I'm definitely the person that would grab my sign and go down there and be right in the middle of the action. So, but my last year here, I guess just after the success of the Udall and the Truman, we thought, well, maybe I should just go ahead and try for a Gates Cambridge or a Marshall. And so I did apply for those, but wasn't as successful. But I mean, I believe everything happens for a reason, and I ended up at Colorado State, and I'm very happy there. I did actually also apply for a National Science Foundation fellowship, and was fortunate enough to obtain one of those. So I was very happy that I was at least able to pay for grad school. So.
Were you surprised at your success in competing with these national, international prestigious scholarships?
I was, because the process is so long. I felt really fortunate just to be nominated from OSU because there were so many students that, of all the students that applied, I respected them all and knew that they had done great things. And so then just to make it out of OSU and then to be named a finalist, because I knew that I think that 12,000 students across the nation applied for the Truman Scholarship at least last year. And then they knocked that down to 200 finalists. And so just in a numbers game, I've always been interested in statistics. I was like, statistically, this isn't very likely. So, and
The final selection number is how many?
65.
65.
So then they select 65 Truman Scholars. And so I wasn't sure, I thought that like my policy statement was very unique and it was what I truly believed in. And so I was really passionate about. And so I thought, maybe someone may not agree with me, or I just in terms of the numbers, I didn't feel very good about it. But kind of like everything, I knew that I was going to go in there and do my best and prepare as much as I could and then just not have any regrets. So I feel like I was lucky. I mean, I think that there was a little luck that goes into it, and that I couldn't have done it without Dr. Grauman and so many people helping me. And I'm very thankful because I know how important letters of recommendation are. And so I never read a letter of recommendation that anyone wrote for me, but knowing how important they are, I am very thankful for those who did. And so I didn't really know what to think, but but after going through the process, I feel.
Courtney, let me ask you a different kind of question. Like you indicated that there's a couple scholarships you applied for that you were not successful with. What about students who competed, unsuccessfully for scholarships? What do you tell them? I mean, did they still benefit from being in the scholars program, and if so, how?
Oh, definitely. Just getting the opportunity to work with Dr. Grauman one-on-one will help you no matter who you are or what you do. And just once you apply for a scholarship, maybe that's the first thing that you do in scholar development. Usually a professor will identify a student that is exceptional and recommend them to Dr. Grauman. And so once you maybe if the first thing you do is apply for a scholarship, then after that, Dr. Grauman and Gill know who you are and are able to tell you about all the other programs that they have, like studying abroad or applying for a WINS research project, and just the process in general. Because a lot of students that apply for these scholarships are probably going to go on to grad school, especially if it's a Truman or a Gates Cambridge or a Marshall. And so applying for graduate school was so easy to me because I had already thought about everything that I'd done through these projects and learned to write well. And I had written personal statements for the Marshall and the Gates Cambridge Scholarship, and I needed personal statements for my graduate school applications. So I'd tell them, and it's kind of like I told Savannah Smith, who was a Udall Scholarship the year after I told her, when I approached her, I said, you should really think about applying for Udall Scholarship. And she was like, no, she was like, I would never win that. I just don't feel like I have the credentials. And so I was like, no, I was like, trust me, you do. And just, even if you don't win the scholarship, it's worth it enough just to know Dr. Grauman, to, have that closer relationship with your professors that you develop through, needing them to write a letter of recommendation for you and working with them on that. You develop such a great relationship with those professors, and it's well worth it. And so she applied and ended up winning the scholarship. And I always tell people, you'll never get a scholarship if you don't apply for it. So, and with all the benefits of just applying, it's completely worth it. So.
Courtney, a little bit about, we're talking about your, success in the program, and some didn't have as much success, but I'd like to talk, kind of broaden out and talk about the program, kind of your perspective on it, where you see maybe going. Is that be okay?
Yes.
All right. What do you feel from your unique perspective, having been involved in it, closely? What do you feel are the strengths of the scholar program at Oklahoma State? And you probably had a chance to talk to a lot of other participants at other schools and kind of find out about their programs. How do you think OSU rates, and what do you think of the strengths?
Oh, I definitely think that it's one of the greatest programs in the nation, because I know that Dr. Grauman and a faculty advisor from the University of Arkansas, and some others, I'm sure, were very instrumental in forming, I think it's called NAFTA, which is the National Association of Faculty Advisors. And so just from Dr. Grauman being so involved in that, and they have a whole listserv, and so he's able to, not just tell other people about what we would do, but learn from other people and what works for them and what could work for us. And that was something that even I learned was really important just from being involved in SGA and learning from a student at the University of Missouri. So I think that's definitely a strength, is that Dr. Grauman is so willing to be out there and know people who are his counterparts and interact with them and exchange ideas. And I think we benefit a lot from that. And I'm sure other schools have benefited a lot just from Dr. Grauman telling them about what we do. But I think that the greatest strength of our scholar development program is the way that they work with faculty and professors, and the way they involve faculty. Because, as great as Dr. Grauman is, and for as much as he does, he knows that he can't do it alone. And he knows that there's so many other people out there that can help students, and that their ideas and how they can benefit students are important too. So he goes a long way, like with the WINS program, and even asking faculty to come over to Cambridge and teach the classes that they do, and with the freshman research program and things, just involving them in a way that they feel like they are so important and that they can really make a difference in students' lives. And so just to have that, I think, benefits so many students in such a big way. And just kind of the innovativeness, and the another strength, I think, is the fact that he kind of is not afraid to try new things. Like with the Gates Cambridge, or with the Cambridge experience for students, I mean, he started that. I mean, that would be a pretty difficult thing, I feel like, to start and kind of intimidating, but just to, try it and then get other people, like donors and sponsors involved, I think is a great strength.
How important is the research component, the WINS research program to developing successful candidates?
I think it's really important because, for instance, on my Udall, it's not so much important for maybe the Truman Scholarship, but for all the others, I think it's very valuable and almost necessary, completely necessary, because at least on the WINS project, or on the Udall application, there's an essay where you have to write about your research experience and what you've done. And I mean, it's something that I think is very scholarly to do. So in terms of the Gates, Cambridge, and Rhodes and Marshall, they like to see that you've pursued out of the classroom scholarly activities, and research is the best thing that you can do for that. I mean, it gets you to where you can find a problem or objective and develop your own way of solving it. Excuse me.
For your comments earlier, I guess it also helps your relationships with professors.
Yes, definitely.
What? How could it be improved, Courtney? I mean, I'm not saying it's good. How could it be even better? There's some things you could see that maybe we could do to enhance the program.
I think that while the program reaches a lot of students, I wouldn't say a weakness is the number of students that we reach, because I think that with the WINS programs and everything, the office reaches tons of students. But I mean, if there were other programs that maybe could get other students involved, maybe they're not interested in research, but there's something else that they could do that would kind of motivate them or kind of inspire them to get going, solve a problem. Kind of like the Creativity Initiative did. Something like that, maybe partner with the Creativity Initiative. That would be something that would be really good to think about. I think that the Henry Bellman Endowment has been really good, because I think it's a way that Dr. Grauman can make sure that once he's gone, which will be a very sad day, that the program still continues on and still keeps going. So I think that's very important. But I don't know.
Say it a little bit different way. What will be critical for the scholar program's continued success?
Well, I think that, of course, financial backing is very important, especially after we've seen how the economy can kind of go up and down. But I think that they've taken great strides to take care of that. And I think maybe one thing that I tried to do while I was here was, since I had already won a couple of scholarships, I felt like it was kind of my duty to help other students who are pursuing scholarships. So maybe like a scholar mentor program, kind of like Kyle Jones did for me. He helped me whenever I was applying for my first WINS scholarship. He gave me some example proposals, like one he had written or other people had written. So maybe kind of like a scholar mentor program would help, because, I mean, students know students, and maybe a scholar who's involved in something with other people, kind of like I was with the 2 Udall scholars after me, I could see potential in them that a professor in a classroom couldn't. So because I was in outside activities with them and we were doing extracurricular things and not classroom work together, because one of them was like 2 years younger than the other, was in a different major. So I think that to get scholars involved who have been successful to kind of expand to help other students who they think may also be successful or benefit from a program in scholar development. So that was something that I felt really strongly about.
How is your participation in the Scholars Program? How has it influenced your life?
Oh, it has influenced my life a lot. If it hadn't been for it, I probably wouldn't be in graduate school right now. I mean, because I just, one, found ways to pay for graduate school. I don't know how else I would have paid for it without going back to work and maybe working while I was going to graduate school. And it enriched my undergraduate experience so much, just by the research activities and just making me an all-around more informed and better person, with an emphasis on, knowing what's going on in the world around me, really caring what's going on in the world around me, and knowing about things like 17th century these books and James Joyce, and just kind of having all of these different things and opportunities that I could pull from to maybe take with me after I graduate and in my future career, that I could look back on and remember what I learned that may impact some sort of situation that I'm in or problem that I'm trying to solve. So I think it just went a long way in enriching my education and making me more well-rounded.
Well, you mentioned Colorado State, so you're doing your graduate work, working on your master's program.
Yes.
Now. Can you share just briefly a little bit about why Colorado State, what you're majoring in, what research you're doing?
Yes, I am majoring in civil and environmental engineering, and I actually, when I was looking at graduate schools, I didn't think about Colorado State until one of my professors said, for what your interests are, you might want to look at Colorado State and think about going there. And so I got to noticing that a lot of my professors in biosystems engineering had civil engineering degrees from Colorado State. A lot of professors that I really respected and felt like were excellent teachers and researchers. And so I did. I looked into it and found that for what I wanted to do, environmental engineering work, specifically dealing with water and energy and things like that, Colorado State is one of the top programs in the nation. And they're also a land-grant university, which has always been very important to me. I won't go to a university or an education that's not a land-grant university that has its core values in agriculture and educating the masses. So since that was a priority, and I knew that Colorado State was one of the top universities in the nation, and they're considered the green university, they have a high emphasis on sustainability, I thought that I could learn a lot from them and how they do things. And my research there deals with emerging contaminants, and which are things like pharmaceuticals, antibiotics, steroids, hormones, and personal care products. And Colorado State is interesting because it's a very arid state, which I never thought about it as that before, but they're a water source for a lot of other states like California, Nevada, with high populations, Arizona, because the Colorado River starts there. So they have a lot of issues with water quality and quantity. And so I'm doing a full watershed analysis on a river. It's called the Poudre River, and trying to identify the sources and transport mechanisms of these new emerging contaminants that they're finding in the water. And then once we find that, ways to help mitigate and control them. And if they're really a bad thing, do they really impact people's health, or are they that bad for the environment? So trying to study that and figure out those things. And the watershed that I'm studying is interesting because since it is an arid climate and it's in the foothills, it starts in a very pristine area up in the mountains near the Continental Divide, and its basic source is snow melt, and then it flows down through Fort Collins where it gets urban impacts, and then through a predominantly agricultural area, and then through another city before it goes into the South Platte River, which is a big source for water in Nebraska and Kansas for agriculture. So identifying ways that different land uses and landscapes impact the water and what the sources are. And then, of course, since there's no tributaries, all of the diversions and inlets to the river from irrigation ditches and agriculture. And the hypothesis is the irrigation ditches are the transport mechanisms for these contaminants. So that's what I'm trying to figure out, if that's true.
I may be getting you ahead of yourself a little bit because you're trying to get your master's finished. What are you thinking academically on there? interested in pursuing your PhD, and are you thinking about where and your subject matter?
Yes, I would actually like to pursue a PhD, and I would like to come back here to do it because, and a big reason for that is one, because it's really practical because my husband is getting his degree in equine science at CSU, and he hopes to come back to Oklahoma. He has an internship with Lazy E Ranch this summer, and he would like for that to maybe turn into a full-time position. And I want to be back in Oklahoma someday anyway, so if he's going to do that, then I was like, well, I'll just go back and get my PhD at OSU, and I would like to get my PhD in either agricultural economics or environmental science. And I like the PhD program in environmental science here because it's interdisciplinary and it pulls from a lot of different departments here. And I think that's interesting. And then, or agricultural economics, because when I was here, I actually took quite a few ag econ classes just because I thought it was interesting. And I think it's important to not only know the science and engineering behind problems, but also the money issues and the economics behind them. So I think that in terms of what I really want to do, an economics degree would help me more than anything. So,
would you see yourself in an academic role in teaching or in business and industry, or have you thought that far out?
Well, I think that one day I would like to come back to teach, which is one reason why I'd like to get my PhD. But I think that from my experience, my best professors were the one that had some sort of experience outside the academic world. And so I know for sure, after I use my Truman Scholarship, I haven't used it yet, I have to work in public service for 4 to 7 years, which is a stipulation. And I feel like I would do that anyway, just because, I mean, I think public service is very important. So I hope to maybe work at the state level, maybe in government or some avenue like that, maybe the Department of Agriculture or something in the environmental area. And so
your Truman Scholarship you would use for your PhD study?
Yes.
Did you use the Udall for your master's program?
Well, Udall is actually an undergraduate scholarship, okay. So I was able to use that in undergrad.
Okay,
so,
great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Priorities in your life, what's important to you?
Well, and I guess I've missed this back with my parents and grandparents, but one thing that's very important to me is my faith. Of course, living the Bible Belt, I guess it would sound like that's what everyone would say, but I mean, it really is. I grew up in a church called Church of God of Prophecy, which was very small. It was very close to everyone from the babies to the elders of the church, and learned a lot from them. And since I went up to Colorado State, that was one thing that was kind of priority, was finding a church and people to fellowship with, and just so happened to get involved in a student organization there called Chi Alpha Student Ministries, which is affiliated with the Assembly of God Church. And so just kind of making that a priority, and kind of learning how to use, my leadership skills in that area to help and minister to other people. So that's something that's been very important to me. And then family. I mean, I love my family. We've, my husband and I, we took the whole break to stay here because we, wanted to spend as much time with our families as we could. And my grandparents are getting older. And so just being over there, and I spent the night with them, and, just kind of hanging out. Yeah. And my grandpa gave my husband his fiddle because he's learning to play the fiddle. So they were kind of, and he said he's getting too old and getting arthritis, which he played it for us. But so in, like I said, faith, family, and education. And so I think that one of the greatest things that we can do for ourselves is educate, lifelong learning, and always, learning new things. And so,
picking up some of your comments, is it too early to think about what you hope to accomplish with your life, legacy you'd like to leave?
That's a really good question. And
Truman Scholarship question.
Well, that's a question I'd kind of like to ask lots of people, but I think that, to me, I've talked about this before. My husband and I, we grew up and we didn't have a lot of money growing up, and and I was always happy. I didn't know my parents didn't have a lot of money. I thought that we were, just fine. I played outside a lot. And so, I know that money won't be a source of happiness. So I thought, what is my life goal? So I think that I want to somehow improve. I talk a lot about the environment and agriculture, but I really do want to make a difference in that. I want to, and I've kind of struggled with it a little bit because I'm like, that's a huge issue, nationwide, worldwide. How can one person really make that big of a difference? It takes a lot of people. And so I want to be one in a lot of people that make a difference and make agriculture more environmentally sustainable, but in ways that's also good for agriculturalists. I don't want to, shut people down. I want to build them up and not only make them more sustainable, but more productive, and so make it better for everyone. And I don't know if I'll leave that big of a legacy. I don't know if that will ever be attributed to me, but I want to be a part of that and to make a difference in that area. So,
looking back, Cortney, some of your favorite OSU memories, people, places, times. Obviously, it's not the Strip. Some other places.
Well, some people may not really remember all those their times there, but there was, when I was in Dean Reed's Seat Scholars class, when we were preparing to go to Japan, that class was always on Tuesday nights. And right at the end of the class, Dean Reed said, okay, if you don't have tickets to the basketball, who doesn't have season tickets? So I raised my hand. And this guy that I was sitting by raised his hand, so he handed us tickets to the game that night because it was really icy outside and him and his wife didn't want to go. So I knew I couldn't drive because it was really icy, so I walked from my house, which is way down on South Jefferson, all the way to Farmhouse where this other guy was going, and we walked to the gym, and it was all on ice and snow, and it was ridiculous. I fell a couple times, but finally got there, and it was the night that OSU played Texas, and Kevin Durant was on Texas, and Dean Reed's seats are right behind the press box, like center court, third row up on the second level. You can hear the coaches, and it's just really great seats. And it was the game where it went into triple overtime. Byron Eaton hit the really amazing shot. And that was a great memory of mine because we ended up being Texas, and I was in really good seats. and so that was kind of cool, because it's usually pretty hard to get seats as a student because you really have to fight for them. I think I really treasure all of my study abroad experiences, but especially the first time I went to England. And one of my friends that was on that trip, Emily Leonbauer, who was actually SGA president a couple years ago, she knew a family that lived at the Air Force Base in Ely, which is about 15 minutes from Cambridge. So we take the train to this house. They're the two of us and then three other students, because these people had a car that they were going to let us borrow. And we take this, we wanted to go to Edinburgh, Scotland. So we take this car, and which is the steering wheel's on the other side. You drive on the other side of the road, and nobody else would drive but me. And so it's supposed to be like a 6 to 8 hour drive to Edinburgh, and it ends up being like a 10 to 12 hour drive because we took this really big detour through the countryside and finally ended up there and stayed in the hostel. That was really kind of creepy, but it was so much fun just driving randomly through the English countryside and spending time in Edinburgh and seeing the sights, and also the 2 weeks that weekend was in between, getting to learn so much and make relationships with really great OSU students and scholars. So that was pretty entertaining.
According to the last question, you might have already partially answered it earlier, but how do you hope people, OSU people remember you?
I think that I know that people that don't know me may remember that I won the Udall and Truman Scholarship, but I hope that people that actually knew me remember me that, she not only won those scholarships, but she was a really nice person and didn't let her go to her head, was humble about it, and really cared about, not what that did for her, but what that did for the university. Because I always looked at it as, this scholarship is not only great for me, but I think it's great that OSU, that by me winning the scholarship, that it shows that OSU is that great of an institution, that we are a Truman Honor Institution, that students here excel in national scholarship competitions, that we get a good enough education and have that many opportunities that we compete with the Princetons and the Yales and the other Ivy League schools whenever we want. So I think that was always really cool to me, because I didn't want to go anywhere else for undergrad, and I always thought that OSU was the greatest school that there is, and that we are up there with the best, even if the world news and report rankings don't say it or whatever that is. So, I just hope that other people can look at maybe the things that I've done and be really proud to be here and know how great OSU is, and that they can do the same things.
What have we left out?
Oh.
What should I have asked you?
Oh, goodness. That was some really good questions.
Anything else you'd like to add, or something maybe missed and important to know?
Oh, goodness. Let me think. I know that once I walk out of here, I'll definitely think of something, but that was great.
Take time to do this, and your alma mater's proud of you.
Oh, thank you.